All right, welcome back to the live post-game show. This time a little delayed. By the time Giannis press was over last night, probably three, and we just figured it'd be better just to sleep on this. Maybe have a little brunch live show. So if you're out there drinking a Bloody Mary or a mimosa, enjoy
Should I go make one?
if you want to. We're here, but Rutgers falls to USC 42-20, which shout out to Craig Epstein, got the exact right score. Props to him. But I think this game played out kind of exactly how we expected. Before the game, we'll talk about who missed the game. USC had like 4 of its top 5 defensive backs out for this game. Rutgers was without Wesley Bailey, and they were without Ian Strong. In terms of their players being out. Overall, if we're talking high-level stuff, I thought Ethan had a really good game, all things considered. He did – I won't say really good. He had a good game because he did miss some wide-open targets, especially deep. He did connect with some as well, though. But the offense played more than well enough to win this game. Like we said last week against UCLA, the offense wasn't the problem yesterday. It was once again the defense, which is so strange to hear under Greg Schiano that the defense is consistently letting you down. I thought Kyle Monungai, especially in the first half, was just an absolute dog. But it seemed like they were trying to kill the poor guy. I think he had like almost 20 touches in the first half.
Might be right on that.
Before he got hurt at one point when he landed awkwardly, like on his back, and then I still don't understand the college targeting rule because it looked pretty clear it was a helmet-to-helmet hit to me. Maybe it's because it's like the crown of the helmet kind of stuff. But he ends up leaving the game with a head injury. So I hope he's doing okay. Which obviously you don't want heading out of this game. Like they eventually started playing Antoine Raymond more, who I thought as the game progressed looked better. He had a really bad drop early in the game. But then as the game progressed, I thought after the nerves kind of settled, he actually did look pretty good. He converted a really long third down for Rutgers, making a few defenders miss on an outlet pass. I'm trying to continue to come up with some positives before we get into the negatives. Dymere Miller had the best receiving day in a really long time for a Rutgers receiver. I think Alec posted this, that it's the first Rutgers receiver since 2011 Mohamed Sanu or 2010 Mohamed Sanu to have 10 plus catches. He had the most receiving yards since Bo Melton against Illinois, I think 2020. He had 20 targets. So 20 of the 27 Ethan Kaliak-Manis pass attempts were targeted towards Dymere Miller, and he was doing a good job getting open. There was a few that I'm sure that both of Dymere and Ethan would want back. But how about you, Rich? What were some of the positives you took away from this game? I've stolen most of it.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, there's not a ton to take away. I thought the offense was solid. You still have to critique it a little bit, but we'll get to that. It's like hard not to, but yeah, you really stole them. Now I think about it. Dymere Miller was great. Kyle Monungai is a dog. Like the man, you got to give him so much credit. He is fighting through some serious stuff right now. Between last week's injury report, between getting whacked last week and going out of the game and coming back in the game and then going out of the game and coming back in the game this week, it's just he is not fully healthy at all, and he's still able to make things happen, which is just incredible. Last week he got hit in the chest really hard on that one where kind of Ethan laid him out to dry. And it looked like it hit him like pretty hard in the chest. And he comes back this week and he's still like he's questionable, but he's stiff arming people. And I'm like, oh my God, bouncing out. Bowling ball is the perfect term for him because he's small, he's compact, and he just is able to bounce off defenders left and right. It's incredible. Dymere Miller, like you mentioned, really good. I thought Ethan had his ups and downs, but it's still for Ethan standards, I think you can say pretty good game. I don't think you can say great, but I thought pretty good is a good term for it. Now
I want to say he has the most passing yard. I don't know if somebody in the chat could pull it up, but 313 passing yards. That has to be the most since like at least Simon against Iowa in 22.
Forgot about that.
Before that, like there's not many 300 passing games in recent memory for Rutgers quarterbacks. So
yeah,
obviously a good thing there.
Not beautiful, but not a good look. But I mean, I thought we've seen a good Ethan the past 2 weeks. I think Ethan's coming into his own a little bit. He's starting to notice, and the receiving core overall, not just Daimir Miller. I thought Christian Dremel once again proves that he's reliable, and you have to question the coaching staff on that one because it's like leading receiver last year, and now it's like, oh shit, hey, bench. I still don't understand why Chris Long plays as many snaps as he does, but that's, I guess, a negative. So, yeah, I can't think of really anything else. Like,
yeah, so YC, he did miss some wide open passes.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree there. That's why I say I don't think it was like a great game or even pretty good. It was just good. He didn't turn the ball over. He kept us. Right? How many third downs did he complete yesterday? Like he was fine. Like the guy was not like even the fourth or fifth reason we lost that game. So I think we need to contextualize everything. This is a good game for a Rutgers quarterback.
Yeah. I think it's also we have to bring it up, but he also knows when to tuck and run. Now the sliding thing, it drives me bonkers. It's like someone teach this kid to slide with his foot out. Instead, he's like the first one's just like a dive and just I don't even look like cut his arm. I'm like, Jesus.
It was like that Simpson meme where Chief Wiggins kid dives out the window like head first. Yes. Like he just like barreled forward. Maybe he got an extra yard on that, so credit to him. But
yeah. But it's such a bad look for a quarterback. It's like, dude, don't just slide. Just do the baseball slide. You're done. You give yourself up. End of story. So
I want to pull up some team stats. Yeah, let's get the Mr. Exacto himself. Craig, you predicted the score perfectly yesterday, 42-20. And that's the hard-hitting analysis that we were hoping to get. So what did you see going into this game that made you predict the score perfectly?
I mean, to be honest, like I said, I mean, this wasn't that much of a surprise, the result. I mean, I didn't expect to get it exactly right with the score, so I guess that one. But yeah, I mean, just looking at Rutgers' defense, it was just they haven't been able to stop anybody the last 3 weeks. I mean, almost the entire year, it's been pretty underwhelming, and especially going into this one. I mean, you couldn't stop UCLA. What makes you think they're going to stop Miller Moss and the rest of USC's offense? So it was basically this game was going to be about whether or not Rutgers offense can be able to keep up. And I mean, like you guys talked about, I heard you say, I mean, they did an admirable job. They scored at least 20 points for the second consecutive week. Ethan tossed for, like you said, 313 yards. I saw Daimir Miller had a good game, 11 for 131. Kyle Monangai was basically 1 against 11 there. I mean, it was just crazy the amount of tackles he had to fight through, and like you said, he just basically just the amount of hits he took was just insane. So, but I mean, at the same time though, it kind of feels like we're just kind of reaching it because like in college football in 2024, it almost feels like 20 points is like the floor that you got to get. Like these are performances that while we commend, it's almost like this should be the bar. This is what we should have be expecting week after week. We shouldn't be going into. What were you saying? What are you pointing at?
This you see in the chat. That's it. You just said it. But
yeah,
it's like
Brian Chip. I agree. Yeah, I mean this was the expectation going into the season that 20 points isn't the ceiling for Rutgers. That should be like the floor. And the fact that just this and and as much as I like seeing the Kalik Miller connection actually like kind of show itself yesterday. It's week 7? I mean, it took this long to get to this point. I mean, it's just like, like I said, it's. I'm happy that the offense seemingly has finally figured itself out, but this should be This should have been the expectation for the season.
Yep. Some numbers. The last 3 games, Rutgers defense has allowed a combined 1,470 yards and a combined 119 points. That's in 3 games.
It's a lot of points.
That's a lot of points, and it's even crazier. I'm going to share the box score here. How crazy efficient this. I have it open in a Firefox tab. Just how crazy efficient this USC offense was. Like USC's offense only held the ball for 23 minutes yesterday, and they scored 42 points. They didn't have any turnovers. right? So they didn't have any short fields they were set up with outside of the kick return. They had 23 first downs, and they only got to third down 6 times. So they were just super, super efficient. Like every time that they weren't basically like having to get to third down because they were just doing such a good job on first and second down. They averaged 11 yards a pass. They averaged almost 6 yards a rush. I guess if you're going to give Rutgers some credit, they didn't really commit any penalties that made any that were significant, at least. But Rutgers just can't, like, you could probably trot like a good high school offense. I know they said this last week, so it's kind of a lame joke, but probably trot a good high school offense out and they'd put up some numbers against this defense right now. Like I said, going into this game, I had a really short write-up. I said I had them losing by 20, so I guess I'm close, but I said all they have to do is run the same 3 plays that UCLA did last week, and you're gonna win by, whatever number you want to win by. Like just these this high-low crosser concept, like we have no answer for it. Like because our linebackers not only don't know where they're supposed to be on the field, they just are constantly watching the quarterback. They're not focused on where they should be. Mm-hmm. And the amount of times you just see like all the linebackers on the opposite side of the field of where they're supposed to be covering in like his own defense is just like, I'm so tired of it. And somebody talked about here, Coach Harrisimiak has to come up with some answers for how poorly this defense has played for the second half of the last year and the majority of this year. Injuries a part of it, but not all. Yeah, I think schematically, like at some point you have to, like we haven't done a good job of self-scouting and understanding what our personnel can and can't do. And I get that like at some point you have to like, you have a plethora of just bad options and you have to pick the best of the bad. But I can't imagine that this is the best of the bad options right now for this defense, because like, why not just like play like dime defense the entire time? At least you'll have guys who can cover out there. And I don't know. If there's like I said, there's not a great option because we are so injured, but that just goes back to like how many teams are pretty banged up in the Big Ten? Probably 90% of them. So it's not a good enough excuse that like, oh, our guys are hurt, so we can't play football anymore. And I think Greg is starting to feel that. He referenced 223 yards of yards after the catch against UCLA. He didn't even come to the podium with that number for USC because it was even more. It was 228 according to PFF of yards after the catch. Like, if you have these offensive players on other teams streaking across the middle of the field, like we're going to miss a tackle. We're going to just give them these easy, any quarterback in the FBS could hit like a 10-yard crosser, especially if the guy has 2 or 3 yards of separation. So we're going to get eaten alive with this kind of stuff the rest of the year. And I just don't see how that's going to change.
The defense, yeah, you're right. Like it's a lot of injury stuff. Like Aaron Lewis is banged up clearly. He played 10 snaps, something like that. Defense, Wesley Bailey was out. Linebackers, Mohamed Toure is out. Tyreen Powell back, but is he fully healthy? To be determined. Moses Walker goes down. You lose another linebacker. Daryl Jabome was okay, I thought. But like it's at the point where like your defensive linemen are getting pushed around and they're backups. But like not even I shouldn't even say just the backups, because like Troy Rainey has been a rotational piece for how many years now? Malcolm Ray came in as a projected starter, and he's getting shoved around on the interior. And these guys just can't tackle. That's on the defensive coaching staff, and that's partially on Shiano too, because at the end of the day, it is on the head coach. But for a defensive-minded head coach, and he's never had really tackling issues with his team for most of his tenure or most of his time at Rutgers. It's just insane to see this. There's another 10 missed tackles yesterday. I think it was 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah, so I don't have a good answer for this, but I'll ask you guys, what's going on with the locker room with the defense is my question. This can't be explained by one reason. I agree that it can't be explained by one reason. Like, tackling is about discipline in terms of being where you're supposed to be on the field, but also using sound form, and you're not just throwing your arms out, or you're not, trying to tackle in one direction while your body's going in another. So ultimately, like, if you don't have your guys taught how to tackle well, that's on coaching, or it's on motivating these guys to like I know Shiano said it in the presser of last week. If you like haven't played defensive football while you're hurt, you won't understand it. And if you have, you'll know exactly what I mean. Like, these guys aren't mentally locked in if they're missing this many tackles.
Losing's contagious too. I feel like once you lose one, you lose one big. What was it? 2 weeks ago, Wisconsin. And you lose another one big against UCLA, who stinks. And then you lose another one big to USC. Like, I think it's just losing is very contagious. Once you start on that path, it's just like everything falls apart all at once.
Yeah, and I think a lot with the defense is it's almost kind of like a house of cards where, I mean, like the linebacking crew is just terrible right now. It's just so bad, and you can just see out there they just look like they're coached poorly. And I don't know if that's because Harris Simiak he has too much on his plate right now. Like, they're probably going to need a real linebackers coach after the season, because I see it kind of with the Jets. It's just like now that Ulbricht's the head coach, you see the defense fall off because he's also the defensive coordinator. So it's just like eventually things just stack up and it just becomes too much that you can't. And especially and he's dealing with injuries now, so he's got that to worry about, and he's got just so many things on his plate. And I think it's just the fact that the linebacking crew is just it is what it is, just really bad. And then that puts pressure on the defensive line to get the push, and we've seen all season it hasn't. And then it puts pressure on the cornerback, the secondary, which between injuries and just, I mean, yesterday was against these, athletic wide receivers, so it was just a recipe for disaster. So yeah, I think the defense is just a mess right now.
I think it goes more to like, I don't know if you necessarily need a new linebackers coach. I don't think it makes, like, you can't tell me just adding or losing Heatherman and getting Harris Simiak is the difference. It's the fact that you lost Deion Jennings, you lost Mohamed Toure. And there's no depth. There's no depth behind those guys at all. And they should have known that. Now that's on the head coach, in my opinion, for recruiting. You have to figure it out and find guys and go to the portal. And you tell me you didn't want to, you didn't see this happening before the season and say like, shit, God forbid one of these guys goes down. And mind you, they're running 2 linebacker sets. One of these guys goes down and we don't have a third guy. Go to the portal and find a mid guy.
That is what is truly inexcusable. And it's crystallized in my mind the last few days. Tyreen Powell tore his Achilles in January. They had until 3 months later, until spring camp, to go find somebody else in the portal that's useful depth. Because you can't, like you said, Rich, you can't tell me that these guys who have seen these kids game in, game out, practice in, practice out, like they just did bowl prep after, right before Powell got injured. So they knew where these guys were at from a football player's standpoint. You can't tell me what you saw from Daryl Jabome, from Moses Walker, from Timmy Hines-Peter. And I'm sorry that all these guys are catching strays, but you can't tell me that these guys you saw in practice and were like, yeah, in a pinch, he'll be fine. No, there's no way that you saw that. So coaches, you have to build some redundancy on your roster next year, because this like flying by, not by the seat of your pants, but like just enough to get by is not enough to get by in college football. And I agree with Josh Butcher here. The fundamentals were just aren't the same as last year. And it goes back to what Richie's saying. You lose your top 2 linebackers in terms of tackles. Like Deion Jennings had 94 tackles. Mohamed Toure had 92. The next most was Flip Dixon at 76. So you lose these guys who were so sure tacklers. They knew exactly where they're supposed to be on the field. And everyone else who was an impact player seemingly has been really either from like the range of really hurt to just nicked up all season. So it's just like the season from hell. It's, in part because we didn't prepare for this year correctly, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And it's in part the injury gods were not smiling down upon us this year.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. There's got to be depth at this point. We said it before. Same thing we said it last week or the week before that too. It's year 5. You got to figure it out by now. These guys should be ready to go. Thomas Mwanko, who is in year 4 with the program, year 3 with the program, he's missing tackles left and right. Malcolm Ray is a 5th-year senior missing tackles. Shaquan Loyal's a 6-year, 5th-year guy, whatever he is. He's just getting toasted and missing tackles. And it's like,
and it's crazy because Shaquan Loyal, I feel like he's been like the second best player on defense this year outside of Eric Rogers. So like it's contagious. Like you said, he's been really good. I mean, Shaquan he had the worst maybe game of his starting career at Rutgers yesterday. It's I think that 170-some yard touchdown
Mm-hmm.
was his guy that he just totally whiffed on the tackle. But
And another game with no sacks. There is zero
Yeah.
pressure from. So as much as I want to blame the secondary for not being able to tackle, not being able to cover, they're not getting any pressure up front to even help them. So it doesn't matter. I know guys are banged up, but like Jordan Thompson, another veteran who should have been better than what he is and just hasn't done anything. So are you telling me this team's going to have to hit the portal for basically every position this offseason? Because that's basically what it sounds like.
I think we are.
It's crazy.
Nick P asks, does Rutgers get to 6 wins? So currently we're at 4-4 heading into the bye. The remaining 4 games, Minnesota, who is 4-3, we're playing at home. We're going on the road to Maryland, who's also 4-3. Then we have Illinois at home, who is 6-1 and ranked 20th in the country. We close out the season at Michigan State, who is also 4-3. I can't imagine that we win 2 of the next 4. ESPN's FPI, which will be updated after this weekend, currently has Rutgers at a 49% chance to win against Minnesota, a 32% chance to win at Maryland, a 47% chance to win at home versus Illinois, and then a 40% chance to win at Michigan State. Odds are not in our favor there. We are not favored in any of those games, and I don't see it. I don't see it. I hate to be this negative. It would be like huge leaps for me to like rationalize them making a bowl. How about you guys?
Here's an interesting thing is Maryland, Minnesota today, of course. So that's going to be something to watch.
Yep.
3:30 FS1. So that's the next 2 matchups. But the good news for Rutgers is that Minnesota will play Illinois, who's been pretty good this season, before they head to Rutgers. And then Maryland will play Oregon before Rutgers heads to them. So they have very tough matchups before Rutgers plays both of these teams. And I really don't know how to judge either team. I don't know how to judge anything in the Big Ten other than the top like 4 schools. The Big Ten is just so weird this season. USC, I didn't think was like the best USC team in the world. It's actually been like a downward spiral for USC this year. Just kick the shit out of Rutgers. So it's like I don't know how to judge the Big Ten. Maryland, I think, ended up beating USC last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. So it just the Big Ten is very weird this year. And then Northwestern kicks the shit out of Maryland. So like who's who of the Big Ten? I think it's just a giant crapshoot. And unfortunately, I think Rutgers is right at the bottom near UCLA, and that's the problem.
All right, Craig, look into your crystal ball here. How do you see the rest of the season going for Rutgers?
Yeah, right now it's just hard to imagine Rutgers scratching out 2 more. So this is probably one of, if not the worst defense in the country right now. It's just really, really bad. I guess you want to look at it from, I guess, a broader perspective. I mean, you got the Maryland game, which I guess, they could win because Maryland has just been a funny team all year where they scratched out that 29-28 win against USC, but they've had some really bad losses all year too. And then I guess you get to the end of the year and you look at that game against Michigan State and it's like, well, if you got 5 wins, are they going to come in, really pushing for that 6th win, trying to get that bowl eligibility? Michigan State's another team that really hasn't been good all year long either. So, I mean, the opportunity is there. I mean, just find a way to get 1 and then all you need is 4. So on paper, it's like, could they get there? Yeah, but I don't know. Just looking at this team right now and just how much of a struggle it is just to put together 60 minutes. It's just like, right now, I don't see them getting to 6 wins.
This is a great stat by YC by the Sea. Greg, 2.0 is 2-15 in November. I think that's buoyed a lot, or not buoyed. The albatross of that is a lot of games late in the season where we're already banged up, and then we got to play. Penn State's always in November. Maryland has had our number. We've played last year. We played Ohio State in November.
Iowa.
Yeah, it's been brutal. I want to talk about something that Greg said in the presser, where he talked about you're not going to beat USC kicking field goals, and then he immediately kind of pivots that to talking about the decision to kick a field goal versus the touchdown at the end of the half. He felt like he needed to get some momentum going into the half. But this is like all season where Greg will say something and directly contradict himself with the next thing he says or something he says later on. And I think there's just like a lack of consistency in terms of whether we're going to be a conservative team or whether we're going to be an aggressive team. Like, I think all of us knew that like kicking that field goal there was essentially the surrender punt of the game because, okay, yeah, the field goal goes from a 19-point lead to a 16-point lead. We're getting the ball at a half, but we haven't been able to stop USC all game. We were at that up to that point, like what, 0 for the season on 2-point attempts. Like, why did we think that getting 3 points to set up a 16-point deficit was going to result in us having an ability to get back in the game? And sure enough, like, we cut it to 8 at one point, but we were never going to be able to hold up long enough defensively to stop USC. It was, I feel like we needed to like make our own luck in this game that we didn't actually ever attempt to do. Like, we had 4th and goal from like the 1-yard line. I think we just should have plowed Monangai up the gut, and you don't get it, whatever, but at least you're trying. David Anderson made a great point on Aaron Brightman's podcast this week. He said, basically, I don't care what the score of the game is. We could lose, like, as long as we're playing to win. If we lose by 40 and USC beats us, tip your hat to them. But like, basically you have to make these decisions with the intent to win. And I feel like there's too many times where we just make these decisions to kind of like make it look better by the end score. I don't know. What do you guys think?
You gotta risk it to get the biscuit. Just like, and Greg said it post game too. He's like, we're not going to win these shootouts when it's 42-45 or whatever. Like, so you just got to go for it. You got to put points up. And he said it post game. After rewatching it again this morning, he said, like, we need to score touchdowns. Score the fucking touchdown. You're on the 2-yard line. Like, what are you doing?
Like last week, he knew that UCLA was only going to give him a certain amount of possessions, so we had to score. Okay, then why punt it from 4th and 2 from the UCLA 48? We got to get touchdowns, not field goals. Okay, then why are we not trying to score touchdowns when we're 1 yard out with the best running back in the Big Ten, who's been carving this defense up all game? I don't know. I'm just a civilian here, a very fucking pissed off civilian.
That's fair. Everyone's pissed off, I think.
I was just going to say, the formula for the last basically 3 years, especially last year, was basically, I felt like, to stack the wins early, where they get basically their three wins against out of conference teams. So you get those, so you put those in the bank, and then it's basically just figure out a way to get those last 3. And it's like, well, let's take a look at the schedule. And this year, more than any other one, was like, oh my God, like, this is why we were so excited coming into the season. It's like, look how many toss-up games Rutgers has coming into the season. Like, these are teams they should be able to beat. And it's just like I mean, as much as bad as they looked in the Nebraska and Wisconsin games, I mean, you could have, if they just beat UCLA, like, I feel like then they just needed one more win in the rest of the way, and they would have at least gotten bowl eligibility. It's just that UCLA loss is just such a killer. And the fact that you lose to, at the time, a 1-win team that's flying across the country after a terrible loss is just like, it's mind-boggling. And not even just the fact you lost, the fact that they just basically ran all over you. Their offense did whatever they wanted at will. It's just like, that right there that's the season right there. Because even if, let's be honest, even if they figure out a way to scratch out 2 more wins, this season was a massive disappointment. This was a season that we expected a floor of 8-4 and possibly even 10-2. And now we're here, and it's like we're trying to scratch and claw and figure out how this team is going to get to 6. It's like, this is one of, if not the most disappointing seasons in Rutgers football history.
I go back to the Nebraska game more than anything. Like, you win that game, and it's a completely different year. Like, that's 5 in a row. You're 5-0. You're sitting pretty. You can kind of cruise. And I think you win that game, and I can almost probably guarantee you probably win that UCLA game. But then it's just a tumble effect. It's like loss. It's just contagious. Like, I hate to repeat, but.
Yeah, I want to point out something Craig said, because he's dead on. Like, the formula has been rinse and repeat for Schiano literally every year, where you beat up on these cupcakes in the out of conference, and you hope that builds enough of a firewall to like scratch out 3 more wins the rest of the season. He's literally, in the regular season, gone 3-0 against the out of conference each of the last 4 years. His first year was the COVID year. They didn't have an out of conference schedule. So every single year in his 2.0 era, he has gone 3-0 in the out of conference. And most of those years, there's been an ACC win in there too. The only out of conference game they've lost was the Wake Forest bowl game, that was extenuating circumstances. playing a bowl on like 6 days notice is crazy, especially when you don't even get all your players back. But
yeah,
do you guys want to guess Greg Schiano's record in the Big Ten since he joined, or since in this 2.0 era?
can you give us the total amount of games?
So he has played now 9. He has played in 41 Big Ten games in his 4+ years as the head coach of Rutgers.
41. It's not going to be pretty. It's probably like 10 and 31. No,
Greg, you want to guess?
I'll say 8 and 33.
Richie got it exactly. It's 10 and 31.
Ooh, I'm good.
So on average, he's basically going like 2 and 7, 3 and 6 every year in the Big Ten. That's just not going to cut it. And maybe it's even less than that because this is an incomplete year. So maybe we'll do the winning percentage there. So you're winning less than 25% of your Big Ten games.
Against
24.3%.
Yeah. Washington this year, a bad Indiana team last year, a bad Michigan State team last year.
Have they beaten a Big Ten? Maybe this will be like a chat project. Look up. Has Rutgers beaten an opponent in the Big Ten who ended up going to a bowl game that season? Chat.
Ooh,
do your work.
That's a good one.
They only have 10 of them, so it should be easy enough to figure out.
And by the way, I was just gonna say, going back to some of those, I guess, previous years. I mean, let's now that I mean, it's things to do this, but now that they're just struggling so bad right now with this, it's like look at how close they were to not getting bowl eligibility last year. Between, I mean,
yeah,
they had the Temple game was like one less pick six away from possibly losing that game. I forget if that was last year or 2 years ago.
No, that was 2 years ago because they won by.
I'm just saying in general, like as much as they won the out of conference, they've also flirted with losses here. The Boston College game was one less drive away from losing that one. You beat the Indiana game last year was the big Gavin Wimsatt run, and we removed that. They could have lost that one. And also, let's be honest, they played Wagner 2 years, and Wagner is just like, come on, like take that one away, and they're at 5. It's like.
So 3 of those games are against Tom Allen's Indiana teams. 2 of those games are against Mel Tucker's Michigan State teams, and the other 5's a little bit scattered between Maryland, Purdue. I missed the other one. There's someone else, but either way, it's like his wins in the Big Ten wins are against like coaches that aren't even here anymore.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think somebody said Indiana's head coach will have more wins in the Big Ten than Greg by next year. Yeah, probably. I mean, if they continue the trajectory they're on.
If he's still in the Big Ten next year, the way he's going, my God.
I think he likes it, to be honest. I think he likes that underdog mentality type thing.
Coach did question his own decision for going for a field goal at the end of the half in his press conference. He knows it was wrong. Strange decision. Yeah, he very rarely is that candid about. He might say vaguely like, yeah, maybe there's some things I'd want back, but he specifically was talking about that. This is a good question. You guys think our rebuild has been unsuccessful because we focused on defense? If you look at all the other teams rebuilding, like Texas Tech, Kansas, Maryland, Vanderbilt, they all seem focused on offense. So I think you have to look at a rebuild like a multi-stage rocket, right? So like you need certain things to get out of the Earth's atmosphere, and you need certain things to get you from the Earth to the moon, if that makes sense. So I think Greg has done a really good job of getting us off the Earth. I think he's done a great job of stabilizing the program. When you have the huge talent deficiency that he came into this program with, you kind of need to just be scrappy and win more with like grit and toughness. But as you recruit more players, as you develop players the way you want them to be, you kind of need to transition from that gritty, like you want to keep that kind of mentality, but you won't necessarily need to like beg, borrow, and steal to get production. You can use talent to get you there, and you can do things a little bit easier. Now, where I think we've struggled is that like Greg clearly doesn't know how to win in the Big Ten. Like it could be a talent thing. It could be a number of things, but like in the end, like the pelts are on the wall. Like I think he's had 2 or 3, maybe. No, I'm looking at this record now. Never mind. But he's just like, at some point you have to adapt and realize, okay, this is not going to work in the Big Ten. And I realize in the first 4 years he was the head coach, we were playing like 3 top 10 teams from each season. I get it. It's a tough schedule, but at some point they do this in the NFL all the time. Like, you have to focus on how to win your division in the NFL. Don't worry about the playoffs. Like, your first goal and the way you build your roster should be to focus on winning your division, and then you worry about making that playoff run. We're not focused on how to beat the teams in our division, in our conference. We're just kind of like doing it how he wants to do it on the best way he knows how. And it's not good enough. Like, we don't want to hear like progress is not always linear. Like, Greg, this was supposed to be the year. Like, if last year was like this step forward in the program, like maybe we're talking 15 degrees. This is like negative 30 degrees in terms of the step back we've taken. Like, the team next year is going to be devoid of leadership. Sure, we're getting a few injury guys back, but as we've seen, like, who knows how effective a guy coming off an ACL is going to be, especially along the line. I don't know. I'm just like, it feels a bit like an existential crisis right now for this program. Like, clearly we can't keep going with this. Whatever this isn't going to freaking cut it. Like, the schedule is so much harder next year. We play Ohio State, we play Penn State, we play Oregon, we play Iowa. Like, we need to put this way of playing football to bed. And that's not only from what we put on the field, it's how we prepare for the season. It's how we build our roster. It's how we fundamentally want to move the ball or stop teams from moving the ball. Schematically, we need to overhaul. It's funny because I think the offense is actually pretty good. Especially like as we've kind of adapted to certain guys not being able to play, calling different plays. Like, I feel like we've been able to more than effectively move the ball offensively, but defensively, this needs an overhaul in the offseason, in my opinion.
So there's 2 head coaches out of that 10 wins that are still in the Big Ten. And one's Mike Locksley, who I'm surprised he's still there, to be honest. And the other one's Jed Fish, who's in year 1. The Illinois game a couple years ago, it was an interim head coach after Lovie Smith left or fired. So it's like most of these wins are coming against an interim coach, against a bad Tom Allen Indiana team, against a bad Mel Tucker Michigan State team. This is looking back through this. Whoever posted that, good credit to you, because this is just insane. Like, how bad these wins are. Like, they're not good win. I mean, a win's a win, I guess. But
did somebody in the chat post the wins that they've had?
No, I just went through it all. Like,
okay.
It's whoever posted the record saying his November record's bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But going back to the, and then it brought up whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Got me into this whole like deep dive into Rutgers Big Ten wins since Greg's been back. It's crazy.
Question from Justin42. Do you guys think Greg has too long of a leash, and how many years of "we will get there" speech do we have to hear from Schiano? It's year 5. I think he's got about as long as a leash as a coach who isn't 500 can have, I guess. And even maybe longer. You got to remember, the current Rutgers University president he's a lame duck. He's not going to resign. He's not going to resign. So he's here till July. So we need to find a new president. We currently have an interim athletic director. Neither of those guys are going to do anything to shake up athletics, nor should they. Like, Greg has earned the leash he has. I want to put that out there. None of us hate Greg. I think we just wish Greg was more adaptable to where things currently stand in college football. I think he can literally go like 5-7, 4-8 for like 4 straight years before the administration actually has like a serious conversation. How about you guys? How long of a leash do you think he has?
You said it. Like, it's as long as could be. Like, he's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's proven in the past he could win. He hasn't proven it yet in the 2.0 era. I guess you can argue last season was a pretty good one, but just a big fall. But it's not like anything's really going to change. Like, who are you going to go get? Like, that would be better. Number one. Number two, it's like you said, interim AD. He's not touching this. Interim president, a president that's going to be leaving in like 7, 8, 9 months, something like that. He's not touching this. So I just don't see, and he's got a huge contract on top of it all. Like, Rutgers doesn't have a ton of money to like spend.
Yeah,
and
he just signed that extension through like 2030.
And I see someone like blaming Hobbs for extending him, and that's a little bit of nonsense.
No, you needed to extend Shiano after last year.
100%. Like not he's going to go anywhere, but like it's just they're not getting rid of him anytime soon. It's Greg's job until Greg is done.
Yeah,
I would say it's about as long of a leash as a guy who's the only one to have figured out in about 40 years has about here. At the same time, I don't have a crystal ball to know, if we're sitting here in 2028 and Rutgers is coming off a 2-10 season, are there going to be some hard conversations to be had? Yeah, there probably will be. And going back to what you and Mike talking about with just, we know Greg's philosophy when it comes to offense. It's just control the ball, run it down your throat. He basically, like he said it himself, he basically wants them to be Wisconsin, Michigan, where it's just control the ball, run it down your throat, play hard-nosed defense. But for some reason, it just seems like when they play this way, and it gives them basically no room for error, whether it's injuries, then forget about it. If Kyle Monangai has a bad day, you're up Schitt's Creek. Like it's just like you can play, and he wants to basically mirror the way the Big Ten plays, which I guess we were fine with it coming into the season, but it seemingly left them just absolutely no room for error.
It's left them no room for error, and I think like Shiano's convinced himself like the only way to like build a program is the way he's doing it. And all throughout the country, you're seeing these lightning quick turnarounds. Like Indiana is the obvious one, but like there's so many teams that go from like abject disaster to not only respectability, but like big time, massive college football sweeping kind of wins. Like Vanderbilt, like look at their turnaround this year. All they did, not saying all they did, but they hire a new coach. They hire Jerry Kill. They bring over a bunch of players from New Mexico State. Boom.
Power move.
Beat the number one team in the country. You look at Indiana. They hire a new coach. They bring over a ton of his players from James Madison. Boom. They're winning big games. They're undefeated. They're getting college game day on campus. You look at, James Madison brings in Bob Chesney from Holy Cross. They bring in a ton of his players. They're having, they beat UNC at UNC. They scored 70 points on UNC. Like there are ways to do this that don't revolve around like, because it feels a little like Chris Ash-ish, where, Chris Ash, he comes on and he like one of the first things he says is this is a 4-year rebuild, which is like, oh, come on, man. Like this doesn't have to be this way.
No.
And then after the first season, he says it's a 5-year rebuild. And you're like, why are we moving the goalposts that much? And then he says it's like a 6-year rebuild. So it's like, can we just like not keep kicking this can down the field and say like, we need to be doing better? Like, I feel like there's not enough responsibility taken for these massive struggles we've had this year. It just feels like I wish Greg would one time go up onto the podium in a presser when someone asks like, defensively we struggled. What do you point out? I wish he would be like, well, the linebackers haven't covered well and they haven't tackled well. The secondary does this. Like he doesn't ever actually say anything. He just says like, we got to get stuff cleaned up. I haven't seen the tape, blah, blah, blah. Like talk to us like you want to explain stuff to us. Talk to us like you actually seem like you identified the problems, because right now it feels like the problems aren't being identified and they're not being fixed. So just like talk to us about the actual issues you're seeing, not in platitudes, not in generalities. Like we want to hear like from you, who is the leader of the program, who we're supposed to put all this faith in. We're supposed to, dedicate so much time, money, effort, energy. Like show us that you understand what the problems are right now with this team.
First year head coaches too. If I'm looking through it now, like Boise State, obviously they got lucky with Jonty, whatever his name is, Genty, whatever. Genty, Duke. I think that's a good comparison. Duke's got a first year head coach. They're 6-1. Indiana's undefeated. Like, what is Boise State? 5-1. I know this is a weird one because Mike Elko has like an unlimited bank at A&M, but first year head coach 6-1. Like. You can do this and rebuild this program very easily. You have to hit the portal. It's not about filling gaps anymore. It's about filling everything, like filling depth, filling this, not just picking and choosing like, we need a defensive tackle. Let's just get one in the portal. We got linebackers. We'll be fine. You don't have linebackers. Like there's so much. It's so easy to rebuild in today's day and age. And you just said it, but it's maddening that they didn't recognize this before the season. Like it just drives me nuts a little bit.
Yeah. Self-scouting has been pretty poor this year. Not only from like stuff coming into the season, identifying whether backups can play or not, but also like who can actually be on the field? Are you too injured to play? Are you, I don't know. It seems like there's just been a lot of like gaffes decision wise.
Yeah.
All right. So we're 45 minutes in. The presser itself was kind of a hard watch because the mics weren't really like clear as to what the questions were. Do we want to watch that?
It's up to you.
Or
and there's more questions in here too. Like,
yeah, if you want to highlight some questions.
is a good one.
Oh, poor guy.
If I'm him, man, I know running backs, like, it sounds weird to say lifespan, but lifespan in NFL is short for the most part. So I might sit out the rest of the season, to be honest with you. But I don't think he's going to, because I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to play, or good enough, I should say. But there's no way in hell this man's anything above 75% healthy for the rest of the season. And even a 75% healthy Kyle Monangai is probably better than 90% of the Big Ten still, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, I was saying this. I was like, you think he's regretting coming back this season right now? I mean, geez. I mean, now, God, hopefully he's all right. And like, he's like, if he can play, he's going to play. He's just that type of guy. But God forbid, he got a concussion yesterday. I mean, it's a guy. All the goodwill he built up. How his NFL scouting is. Where coming off of last season, we all were like, oh, he's going to go in with so much momentum. He's like mini Pacheco. The way he runs, the way he's tough, the way he cuts. It's like. But then this season, watch now it's gonna flip, and the NFL scouts are probably gonna be like, oh, he's kind of undersized, didn't have a great year. God forbid he had a concussion. It's gonna be now he's got a concussion history, so it's just like, I hope this didn't really tank his NFL stock, but it's hard to see how it helped.
I don't think it tanked his stock by any means.
Yeah, he's still gonna get drafted, and it's not like he didn't have a great year. Like, his numbers are still damn good. He'll get drafted 100%. I think Rutgers fans specifically tend to overrate where he's going to get drafted because of his lack of top end speed is going to hold him back, and his size is going to hold him back a little bit. So I still think he's like a 5th round pick, maybe 4th, because that pass blocking is great. He has a cutting ability. I think he'll play some special teams as well at the next level for sure.
Do you think we see any coaching changes after this year? They have a losing record. I have a hard time seeing them not making any changes. I like the staff that they have. Don't get me wrong. I think Pat Flaherty's one of the best offensive line coaches Rutgers has ever had. Dave Brock is one of the best wide receivers coaches Rutgers has ever had. I still like Kirk a lot. I think defensively, you're going to have to shake something up in the offseason. I can't imagine they go into next year with this group if things continue this way.
You have options, and everyone keeps saying, like, why'd you hire 2 defensive line coaches if the defensive line's not doing anything? Which I guess you could technically get rid of them after 1 year, but I don't see that, to be honest. I think it's more so in the secondary. You have 2 secondary coaches. That's very abnormal too. For the most part, a lot of teams have just 1 secondary coach. Mark Orphe's been courted by SEC programs nonstop over the past couple of years. So maybe not even firing. It might just be more of like, guys could up and leave too for more money, for a different job, for here and there. So like between Mark Orphe being courted by people, I think Demir Shaw's been courted by people, so that could be another one.
Demir Shaw is going to be sought after. That guy, after transitioning from receivers coach to running backs coach, what he's helped transform Kyle into, and that's impressive.
So there's a lot of options out there. I'm intrigued to see what they do, though. Like, I don't know. And then, like, do you take the spot from the linebackers coach spot from Harris Simiak and hire a linebackers coach? Do you go out and get a special teams coordinator? Because that whole debacle is just bad too. Like, I know they got rid of it and they still have special teams coaches, but like their lead special teams coach is the guy from UConn who struggled at UConn and everyone wanted fired at UConn. So it's like, I know he's Greg's guy, but man, got to find someone to help out this unit. The 35 yards per punt yesterday too? 36?
Yeah, something like that.
Brutal.
Somebody asked, do you think we keep Athan if he stays? Of course. Like, Athan has not been the problem this year. Like, he is exactly the type of quarterback that we all talked about needing for this season, where he's not like an elite guy. He's a guy that'll hit open receivers for the most part. He'll allow us to stay on script. The defense is where we've just been totally let down. Like we're scoring enough points to win games for the most part. At least in 6 of the 8 games we played this year, in my opinion, we've scored enough points to win. The only ones we haven't are Wisconsin and Nebraska, and those were his arguably 2 worst games. But otherwise,
or about whether or not he got to stay.
Yeah,
he's not going anywhere.
I don't think he's going anywhere either. But yeah, I don't understand the hate that Ethan gets. Honestly, like I get some people they were Gavin fans, and that's still a little bit of a sore subject. But I think Ethan has clearly been an upgrade at quarterback this year.
Yeah, I find this one kind of interesting because I'm going through the commitment list, and you can't really expect a whole lot out of freshmen at the end of the day. But like Braxton Kyle, she's going to have to play because your defensive tackles are going to get depleted. But other than that, like I don't think John Forster's playing at running back. Jalen Matthews isn't going to play on the line. Most linemen aren't going to play till year 2, 3. Linebackers, McClary and Archie, I don't think they're nearly ready for Big Ten play. Cornerback, Nick Stretch Dorillis, I think he has a chance to play. But other than that, there's really not anyone that really stands out on this list. And it's a good recruiting class. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see a lot of freshmen playing in next season from this recruiting class. It's going to be more dependent on those 2023 kids developing and, again, hitting the portal.
This was an interesting comment from Mark Greenberg. Greg is not the problem. Greg will leave when he knows it's not working anymore. Also, guys, remember he brought in Gleason, one of the spread offense, score a lot of points. He is adaptable. Like, how is this not on Greg? It's his program. You just pointed to Gleason, who he brought in, who is a disaster. Like, he makes every hire in this program. He determines who we're recruiting. He determines who's playing. How do you absolve Greg of responsibility for this? That's insane.
Do we not remember him on the sideline mid-game? I forget who it was against, yelling at Gleason saying, just run the damn ball.
Mm-hmm. I think that was Nebraska when we lost by like 1. Yeah.
And it's like, do we not remember that at all?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he was adaptable, but what did he do? He fired Gleason and brought in a guy who basically runs the exact offense that he wants to run. So if he was adaptable,
run the damn ball.
Yeah.
Where is Gleason now?
He was at Northwestern. I don't know if he still is.
Missouri quarterbacks coach.
Wow. And they were having a really good season. I haven't really followed, but I know they started top 10.
6-1.
6-1. That's really good in the SEC.
Yeah.
Wulu says we need to hit the transfer portal. I would much rather see a good group of 5 transfer play than a true 4-star true freshman, in my opinion. Experience. Yeah, totally agree. When you have 3 or 4 years in a college strength and conditioning program too, and you have learned multiple offenses, like it's hard pressed to find a 21-year-old who's actually played at the group of 5 level at a high level who's going to be outplayed by a 4-star freshman.
Now, this is where Rutgers has to get creative with the portal. Their best transfer in Grace Channel 2.0, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I don't think so. JD DiRenzo came from Sacred Heart, was phenomenal for Rutgers for that entire year. Rotated between guard and tackle that year. Now in the NFL, you have to be creative, and you can't just go straight to the G5 route because that's what every Power 5 program is doing currently. Power 4, whatever you want. You have to go a little bit lower. Look at your best receiver this year. He's from the FCS route. Hit up those FCS talent. There's a ton of talent at these levels of the FCS football. You got to be able to go down there and find. You got to be able to scout. That's what it is at the end of the day. You got to be able to scout these guys and be like, okay, he's done pretty well there. Can he do that here? Yes, like Dymere Miller. Who's another one? I'm trying to think from FCS.
From the FCS.
There's the third one that Rutgers brought in, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head here. But like, here's the other thing is that every level of recruiting, you're going to have hits and misses. And you can't be discouraged because you miss on a guy. Like, I feel like transfer portal guys have a significantly higher hit rate than high schoolers, but they don't have quite the ceiling of like the top range outcomes for the most part. But if you look at our roster, like, and go down, the majority of our best players are transfers. You look at Flip Dixon, you look at Eric Rogers, you look at Ethan Kaliak-Manis this year, you look at Dymere Miller. We just need to. I preach this for years, but it would be malpractice at this point not to go heavy into the portal this offseason.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have to. Like, we lose way too many starters on defense to not go whole hog into the portal.
Yeah, there's a ton of FCS actually. Now I look about it. Like, look at the Ivy Leagues too. Like, there's a lot of names.
Yeah.
And
I mean, those
think,
guys were getting a ton of money last year, though.
Yeah.
If you look at like Thor Griffin, you look at Joey Slackman.
Who else I was thinking of. Yeah. But you got to be able to go down those routes and just pick and choose. I know you've kind of hinted at it previously. We're going to start that thread back up soon because portal guys are visiting schools already, which is insane.
Yeah.
But
looking through the rest of these comments, do you guys have any kind of closing thoughts as we enter into the bye? I know we're planning to have a guest to kind of go over, what it's like to how you get out of a tailspin in a season that's going the wrong direction. We'll just say that. But is there any closing thoughts from this game or the rest of the season that you guys have that you wanted to hit on?
I was gonna say, I mean, it's hard to find positive right now. I guess the only thing you could say is rest up this bye, get some guys healthy, and hopefully go out and beat Minnesota. Because you go out and beat Minnesota, then you got 3 more chances to get that one more win to get to bowl eligibility and play a game in probably Detroit. But it's just or maybe, like you said, Richie, maybe the Pinstripe Bowl will take him back again.
I'd rather that over Detroit.
Oh yeah. Then we could actually go and
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be post World Series Yankees or we'll be really upset about the way things went. I don't know. It was just last night, man.
brutal sports week for Craig. Jets, Yankees, Rutgers fan.
Just a rough life. Just
a rough life.
I do want to say 11 days, baby. That's it. I don't care anymore. It's all 11 days. 11 days till you get to watch Ace Bailey, till you get to watch, where is it? Dylan Harper, Rutgers basketball top 25, the Racks rocking, pandemonium in Piscataway 2.0, Final Four bound. Get ready because Steve Peichel, Brandon Knight, TJ Thompson, Jay Young, Marlon Smoke Williamson. This is it. This is the year for Rutgers basketball. So I got to get the fans a little hyped. So get ready, boys. November 6th.
Richie, are you
Wagner.
these jerseys for yourself? I mean, geez.
I bought one for myself. I'm not dumb. I'm gonna have them framed somewhere. No, probably wear it around. It's different.
It's sick.
I wear.
Soon enough, you might be able to get one in a nice black and white Brooklyn Nets uniform. Maybe both. The way the Knicks are playing. Actually, the Knicks won last night. Knicks crushed the Pacers. So at least they got that back on track.
Yeah.
Well, Richie, that was a great wrestling promo you just cut. So I'll go a little bit more subdued. Rutgers is playing Minnesota after a bye. If you can't, as a roster, get fired up for this game for Athan, for Flip, for Coach Harris Simiak, for whoever else on the team, I'm sure there's like one more. That's a game that you absolutely have to have. You need to be fired up. You need to win these games. This game for the coaches and teammates who were previously at Minnesota. Especially Athan. If this team can't get fired up to play Minnesota for Athan, then there's this is a must win. If we want to go to a bowl, we have to beat Minnesota. That's the easiest game left on the schedule, in my opinion. So go out there and chop Minnesota after a bye. But that is all we've got. Thanks once again for listening. If you want to get involved with the contest, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Mention Rutgers Madness. You'll get 2 entries. And in the comments somewhere below, mention Rutgers Madness, and you'll get entered for 1 entry into the contest. I want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks for spending an hour on your Saturday morning commiserating about this loss. But for me and the guys, this has been another live edition of the Rutgers, the Night Report post-game football show. Jesus. All right, I need to get off. All right, see you, everybody.